In today's video, a neighbor built a cabin on my land to annex my property. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. I know when a lot of people from the West think about India, they picture overcrowded big cities. Where I live in southern India though, it is far more rural and spread out. The area I live in is not only spacious but beautiful land where you can see fields all around. It's very relaxing, but the one downside can be that land disputes happen here once in a while. Nothing compared to what I'm gonna talk about though. So my land has a spice farm and fruit-bearing trees on it, not a mass production or anything, but enough that I can use it to pay for my life. I also trade a lot with others in my community who grow other types of food on their property, or even a couple of them working with wood building things if they have a large number of trees on their property. One neighbor does not quite fit in with everybody else though. He is far more wealthy than any of the others living in the area, but still chose to buy property here in the more rural area. He loves to wear expensive watches and fancy suits just to show off that he has more money and can buy luxury items. Whenever he comes by, he thinks that he's entitled for me to give him spices of fruit because he sees me giving it to other people. I try to explain that I'm giving it to them in trade, but he doesn't want to trade or even buy anything from me. He thinks just being my neighbor means he's entitled to the things that I have. Though wanting my items is not the big problem that I was having with him though. He wants my land in order to expand onto his own and have more land. At first he was not super rude about it and just questioning if I was thinking about selling or giving up my land. Telling him that I wasn't planning on leaving did not seem to be enough for him though, and instead he got more insistent on wanting my land. I was busy harvesting my spices when he decided to wander onto my property uninvited. Neighbor, you know that if you gave me the land you would not need to do all this work. You can just go live in the city where it is cheap and get a normal kind of job. It would almost be like me doing you a favor. Me, well, I enjoy what I do and I don't want to live in the city. What do you even want the property for? I cannot see you harvesting spices or fruit to sell. Neighbor, no, I would tear those down. I could actually build a nice few rental properties on this land. A lot of people would love to get out of the congested areas and be here for a few days. I could even give you a discount if you wanted to come back and visit. Me, well, I'm not interested. Neighbor, well, not yet, but you never know what can happen. One accident and you can lose the spice farm, the trees, everything. Then the property would not be worth much to anybody. It was clear he was making a threat and I was not happy about it. I told him to please leave my property and he did. Well, over time, he started doing things that seemed innocent enough. At first, he had put up a fence and I didn't even realize at the time that it was far deeper on my property than I thought. Then he started slowly creating a small foundation and I did not think anything of it. I actually thought he decided to just build the cabin he was talking about on his own property since he knew that he could not have mine. As it grew though, I could see how close this cabin really was getting to my trees, and by the time it was finished. It was not until that point that I even knew that he was far over the property line onto my property. I tried speaking to him about it, but he acted as if it was just some small mistake. He told me that he realized that he had gone over the line with the cabin, and he also insisted that it was only a meter or two, and if I really wanted to be the type of person to fight over that. I knew what he was talking about. When property disputes happen, they are usually over a large amount of space, usually 20 or even 30 meters. When people do want to fight over literal millimeters of land, they are not seen well by the community. He knew this, and since I didn't know exactly how far over he was, I did not want to start an argument. He would follow on his threat though and turn me into the type of person people wouldn't want to trade or buy from. I could not let it go though, and I managed to get a hold of a land surveyor who would check the lines and let me know just how far into my property he really did push that cabin and fence. It turned out that he was building not a couple of meters onto my property, but nearly 50. I never even heard of a property dispute here where somebody went that far over. I knew speaking to him would not help as he knew what he had done. I got a copy of the land survey and went to go and speak to a lawyer who specialized in this kind of thing. I showed him what happened and he told me that usually cases like this were simple. I would show the neighbor the survey and a legal letter telling him to remove the cabin since it was encroaching onto my property. It's a series of events I've seen happen several times and usually it would be where the disputes end. I brought it to my neighbor, who instead of apologizing or accepting what I was showing him, just huffed at me. He told me that I was a liar and started getting angrier the more that he spoke. He told me that I had made up the paperwork, not only the land he took belonged to him, but even more of my property was really his and he was just being nice and letting me live on it. Ending the conversation with that he was done being nice and when he was done with me, he would have all of the land and I would be a pariah for trying to start trouble. He did the exact opposite of backing off and instead started construction on a second cabin next to the first one. This one seemed like it was gonna end up even further on my property. He brought in a landscaper and had a few bushes that had berries growing on them destroyed. He was proud of what he was doing and I was miserable and trying to speak to the lawyer again to come up with a plan that would not take months to years. Neighbor threw a party, inviting a bunch of rich friends to celebrate what he was gonna rent out cabins and get rich. During the party I could hear him pointing me out and talking about me to other people. He just figured that since I was in a rural area, I did not know English as well as he did. Jokes on him though, because I went to a private school where I was forced to speak only in English. I heard him tell people that I was a problem and he would get rid of me because I was scared of him, admitting flat out that he could encroach on my property and that I was supposedly too stupid to stop him. My lawyer had given me one piece of advice, which was to not get violent or show him too much emotion. Either thing though would only benefit him and make my case worse. Instead, I took photos and videos of everything he was doing so we could show it to a judge. Finally, we had come up with a plan of what to do once I had enough evidence. I knew the cabin was on my property, so I decided to take advantage of that and started to use it. I was storing mainly useless junk in there, so if he decided to throw it out, I would not be at too much of a loss. Aside from a few specific number of items that I knew had value and could be replaced, this was all part of the plan. When he found my stuff in there and threw it all out, I called the police on him. I claimed that he had stolen my property and he was now in serious trouble. He of course was claiming that I put it in his cabin and that he had the right to throw it out. I showed the police my survey and told them that it was on my property and I was using it for storage. I was careful about what I put into it for a reason. I wanted just enough value to have been thrown out so that he would actually get in trouble with the law. Of course, his defense would be that it was his property, meaning that I would get to defend that it was mine and finally get things sorted after months of trying to wait. When he argued his side of things, I was able to show the police and court every single piece of evidence that I collected over the months. The video of him speaking in English, admitting that he did it, the property survey and more. Now, the neighbor was the one getting angry and not able to control his temper despite being in front of authorities. He started to scream at me and say that he was gonna destroy my spice farm right in front of everybody. They found everything in my favor and it was time for the neighbor to see his punishment. The first being the cabins needing to be destroyed since they were illegally built on my property. Then he had legal fees to pay as well. He had to pay for the bush he destroyed using my property without consent and for the things he had thrown out. It turns out his money was not endless and he had to sell his property in order to afford to pay for everything. That did not get him off the hook for being a thief either, as he was still gonna end up behind bars for a while due to the property theft. Land and property theft is no joke in India. His last-ditch attempt to get me back was to try and tell everybody that I got him arrested when all he did was make a mistake and build a couple of meters over the property line. Nobody believed him over me though, and the little standing he had was now gone. They knew that he was a bully and felt like he had gotten what he deserved. I'm just glad that nothing of major value was destroyed and I can now continue my peaceful life without him as my neighbor. And yeah guys, if you enjoy these crazy neighbor stories, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The next one is an amazing malicious compliance story. So my parents bought the river/stilt house next to their house for me to move into to help me out in a number of ways. That is super awesome and I'm forever grateful. However, my mother does not like to always think things through and rush them, and God forbid you disagree with her. So well, it happened that apparently I just had to get moved to the river house before this recent blizzard hit or the world would fall apart or something. Okay, fine. The problem is that the previous owner died halfway through renovating the place and it does not have a functional water and sewer. But my mom, in her infinite wisdom, decided that does not matter and I can just walk next door to my parents' place every time I need to use the bathroom until my dad finishes getting the water and sewer done. She said he would finish it the day or the next after I officially got moved, and then she said the quote that is the title. Well, I know my dad and that was never gonna happen. While I'm no stranger to having to piss in a bucket or in a hole in the ground when camping, needing to poop and having to do it in a trash bag, in a bucket, and then having to deal with that is something I just do not want to have to do. I've been here 4 days now, and while I tried not to eat/barely eat over the weekend, I got moved Saturday before the storm hit in hopes my dad would be able to finish the water and sewer. All the outside stuff is done, it just needs the inside the house stuff done on Sunday or Monday. That did not happen. So I finally had to eat some actual food, not just candy, to keep my blood sugar up come Monday and Tuesday, because I was starting to get super woozy and dizzy. Well, it is 1 AM in the middle of the night now, and I woke up with nature frickin' calling. So I, as quickly as I could without having an accident, threw my outside gear on, it's currently almost 0 Fahrenheit at my house outside, to run over to my parents' house next door, only to discover that their door would not open. The handle would turn, but the door was not budging. It was stuck because it was frozen, so I proceeded to use my old cop knock from my EMS days to get one of them to open up, because I'm about to poop my pants right there on their porch at this point. My mom comes and opens the door a second later, thank Jeebus, and tries to lecture me on that I didn't need to scare her and dad awake at 1 AM. Meanwhile, I'm running to their bathroom while pulling my pants down and just loudly yelled, "I gotta poop! I ain't using a trash bag!" After taking care of business, I went to go back to my new house and my mom mentions that maybe she shouldn't have had me move before the water and sewer was hooked up. I will continue to not give a damn about waking her up at night if I need to take care of business. She said I could come over anytime I needed to do so to use their bathroom, and it's not like I can schedule when my body needs to do its thing to only happen during normal waking hours. Oh well. Maybe now she might actually start to listen when people try to point out why she shouldn't rush certain things. It probably won't happen, but a girl can dream. Edit, I'm paying my parents back for this new house, by the way, once my old house sells, with the proceeds left over after the mortgage is taken care of. The new house is a stilt house on a riverbank that they got for only 20k. It's not like they just bought me a house outright to give to me. Also, the move easily could have waited another week. The old house was completely livable. My mom is just irrationally impatient about things and does not listen to others at all when she gets an idea in her head about how things should go. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I consider myself to be a very fortunate individual. The accident I experienced as a young man could very easily have killed me, and while I will not go too deep into detail about what exactly happened, you need to understand that I did lose my right forearm in this accident. I was right-handed as a young man, so I even had to relearn everything from writing to how to catch myself when I fall, simply everything. I adjusted and I adapted. And to this day, I still don't consider handicap to be a proper description of me. I'm a capable man with a loving partner who I plan to marry before too long, and even if I lost my other hand, I would marry her without the convenient finger to put a ring on. However, workplaces have always labeled me as handicapped. If I was gonna suffer their discrimination on this front, then I would take the things they offered me as a result. And one of the many things I received from the government as a result of this is a handicap tag for my car. I get all the prime parking I could ever wish for. Except I don't like to use it because I know I get around a lot better than many others who have this tag. On the day this story happened, I was impatient and the place was crowded. I did not exactly consult my morals or ethics when someone pulled out of a handicap spot right in front of me after I had done 3 laps around the crowded parking lot with a line of cars building behind me. So then I parked. As I was getting out of my car, a few of the cars behind me continued on their rounds around the supermarket's parking lot. I was confused when one of them jerked to the side, nearly scraping my bumper, and then halted. The Karen of this particular story jumped out of her car while it was idling and ran over to me. I was completely caught off guard and leaned back into my car as she tore me a new one about taking the spot from people who have more need of it. She accused me of having a fraudulent handicap tag and played, I guess, and said that due to her handicap and her need to care for her children, she should have the spot I took. She finished by saying, "What is even wrong with you anyway?" as she gestured up and down to my outwardly appearing healthy body. As I said before, I'm not a fan of the label handicapped, and I have a few jackets that I wear nearly everywhere that make it hard to recognize that there's anything wrong with my right arm. Instead of buying into her anger, I simply replied, "Whatever is wrong with me was enough for them to give me the tag, same as you." I should ask you the same, since you were quick to spring out of your car and rush over to me. Her eyes widened with shocked rage, and she sagged on one of her legs theatrically, so she had to lean on my car with a sudden inability to walk. One of the kids she had mentioned had opened the passenger side door as much as she could without hitting one of the cars her mom had parked on the bumpers off. The mother chastised me with all her "how dare you" about being disrespectful to the mothers that keep this country running despite getting no thanks. I did not think that she wanted to hear me talk about my admiration for my partner and all she does for me, so I kept my mouth shut. Then she turned to her daughter and shrieked, "Shut the car off already, girl, and bring mama her cane. She's hurting." Her daughter tried to protest and Karen snapped at her again. I took my cue and went into the mall while she griped at her daughter. I figured if she was still parked there when I got out, I would figure that out then. I was doing some late birthday shopping for my siblings that are fraternal twins. It brought me all over the mall, from dress departments and department stores to board games and geek shops. Whatever Karen was shopping for, apparently, was bringing her on exactly the same path as me. I knew she was following me, but I thought I would just get stupidly chewed out again at my car and made a mental note to bring mall security to the car with me so they could make her move her car. What I didn't notice early on were the small crowd of her children that she had commanded to record me on my journey throughout the mall. I live in a two-party consent state, which in simple terms means that any recorded material requires consent from all parties involved. There are some expectations, but private phone recordings are not included in this group. I'm glad I did not notice this until much later, because these actions that attempt to invalidate handicapped individuals and imply that because they can live normal lives they don't deserve the same protections as normal people are incredibly ableist. It would have potentially built up more frustration and anger, and the last thing mine and Karen's final encounter needed was even more drama. I did my shopping and found myself a bit peckish. I wanted a security guard anyway, which I easier to find in the food court, so I made my way there. I was in line for a ringer of a Mexican fast food joint for a guilty pleasure snack when Karen approached me. "Hardly effing disabled are you if you can lug around all that bullcrap you bought?" Her voice was raised so that conversation around us died away immediately. It's funny, I actually carry shopping bags the way I do because of my prosthetic arm. I lost my arm past the elbow, so I have pretty good control of it, and I found early on that it was easy to use my prosthetic like a curtain rod to hold grocery bags. Also shopping bags and the like. And then I have completely free use of my left hand for whatever I might need. I turned to her and reiterated that we all have our own issues and attempted to brush her off and go to the cashier, who was available now. I noted that this time she was theatrically leaning on her cane as she walked. She kept her voice raised, trying to draw attention. "So, are all your issues the delusions in your head? Or is it just your crippling inability to pay respect and defer to people who have it harder than you?" I replied, "Ma'am, I promise you, I did not mean to—" Ma'am, she repeated in a shrill mocking voice. "You just don't want to be exposed in front of the entire mall, do you? Fraud." I start scanning the food court for those security guards I was hoping to find and see that at least two have had their attention drawn to the panic and were making their way through the crowd that was forming. I just need to stall a little bit longer. Unfortunately, I had taken my eyes away from Karen at the wrong time. She went to shove me, and while my prosthetic is great at holding shopping bags and keeping my other hand free, it's not as good at contributing to my balance. I could feel myself tipping back and falling and reaching out with my good arm with pure adrenaline spiking through me. As I said before, falling while missing a limb takes more learning than you realize, and that learning made falling something I was always terrified of. I grabbed the first thing I felt with a death grip and restored my balance and managed to keep myself from completely eating dirt by stumbling into a pillar that was nearby. Once conscious thought returned, I felt dread as I realized that what I had grabbed hold of was Karen's arm. She was now on the ground and security had just arrived. They were trying to figure out what was happening while she grabbed her arm and screamed that she had been assaulted by me. Deer in the headlights, I look around and spot her daughter from the car with the camera trained on me. Adrenaline in my veins and indignity and rage at the wrong I could tell was about to happen if the security guards bought her story, I stormed forward. I shut her down with a raised voice and pointed out the girl who was recording me. Only I never got to because Karen went for her revenge by pulling on the few bags still hanging from my prosthetic. The shocking moment that comes anytime the weight of my forearm disappears happened, and I heard her slump to the ground again. The shock in her eyes when she held my arm and the collective gasp that went through the crowd, at least in my vindictive imagining, were priceless. The next events went by in a blur. Security asked if I wanted to press charges on Karen. Yes, I did, if not for the assault, then for the recording. They interviewed me as to all our interactions that day and if I knew Karen from anything before. Of course I didn't. The interviewing took a minute and when I left, it was just in time to watch Karen be escorted out. As I walked out the mall doors, I got to see her push down into the back of a police cruiser while her car was already on the bed of a tow truck. The assault charges were corroborated by her own recordings, which I gave my consent to, so that they could be used in court and get her a year in county corrections. I would have probably dropped the charges, but during the court case I got to see that the children did have a stable father and his family in the near area that had divorced from Karen only a few years back. The assault charge helped him get primary custody back and I feel confident the kids are in better hands with their father now. I got one really good laugh out of the entire encounter. In the video, Karen drops any pretense of needing the cane when she goes to shove me over. A miracle worker on film fixing a woman's ability to walk and casting off his own arm in the process. Apparently, the car she was driving had handicap tags because she registered it in her mother's name for better parking, so one of us definitely did not deserve the spot. And it was Karen. Before we end the video, I will read one last story from r/petty revenge. It is titled, "Don't Mess with My Little Brother." My little brother, when he was in junior high, was bullied by a much bigger kid who rode the same school bus. Little things like an elbow in the ribs, knocking his books out of his arms, etc. The worst was when he farted into his cupped hand and then placed it over my little brother's face, calling it a gas mask. My parents went in to talk to the vice principal, but were told that without witnesses, other students were afraid of the bully, his hands were tied. My oldest brother, I will call him Joe, was a junior in high school, I was a freshman, and played ice hockey. He was over 6 feet tall and probably weighed around 180 pounds. Back then, he was a big kid and had the ice hockey physical contact mentality. So anyway, Joe got a ride up to the junior high with a permission slip to ride the bus home with our little brother and was waiting at the bus stop when students were dismissed. He stepped in behind the bully just as he was going up the steps and followed him to his seat. When the bully sat down, Joe hip-checked him against a window, sat down next to him and introduced himself. For the next 20 minutes or so, Joe spoke to the bully in a very matter-of-fact tone, telling him that he needed to stop bullying our little brother. He made no threats because lots of other students were listening. The petty revenge? The bully's last name was Nobles. Joe referred to him as No Balls the entire ride. It became the bully's nickname. And yeah guys, thank you so much for watching. Please post some star emojis in the comments and I will see you again tomorrow.